It is just to come to openness. Openness is the simplicity of just being here with no agenda, no expectations, can only truly be fully here when there is no agenda and no expectations, nothing wanted, nothing needed. When we truly come to the openness of being the presence that is this moment, there is just what is exactly as it is. When we come to openness, we let go of all of the attempts and needs to control this moment, and we actually open to receive what is here. All of the attempts to control the moment, to control the life, are out of contraction and protection, need and desire. But when we come to openness, openness is receptive. Openness is the true nature that is simply receptive, that only knows what is. We come to recognize the choiceless nature of everything that is happening. That there is no one doing and there is no one choosing. We could say the only choice that we are presented with is whether to turn to the mind and the meanderings that want to control, or whether to turn into the openness, the spaciousness of being. But even where we have free will and there is a sense of choice, we are only given so much spaciousness before the flow of true life will come in and redirect us. The play of life on the surface is created out of your very own consciousness. And that consciousness is one consciousness. It's not a personal consciousness, but it is a unique flow, which is flowing in complete harmony and accord with the whole. So everything that is happening, that is your life, is not only perfect for you, it is perfect for all beings, because it is the one flow of wholeness, moving consciousness moored with its own nature. And really, its only intention, we could say, is to be. But within that, there is a quality of an evolution, we could say, that consciousness naturally is moving to evolve within itself. And it is creating exactly the circumstances on the surface of life in order for consciousness to meet itself, experience itself, and deepen into the true nature, the freedom, and out of the tangled habitual patterns. So the tangled habitual patterns are not personal, even though they can seem personal. They are not personal. They are part of the whole. They are part of the collective, and they are carried by the whole. But it can seem like each one has an individual assignment, an individual set of circumstances that they are here to play out in this lifetime. And this we call karma. Essentially, when we come to openness, we come to this moment, we come to presence. And the recognition is that things cannot be any other way than the way that they are. Can spend so much time and energy trying to solve and resolve, so much energy trying to control, trying to make it better. But essentially, the only way to truly meet life, we could say even to resolve life, is to take it in, take it all the way in, receive it into the openness of true nature. Because it is only this that shifts the patterning of consciousness, that creates the play of challenge on the surface of life. It is only when we take it fully in and refine it into the being that the patterns of consciousness actually shift. And then the consciousness, it's always creating the surface of life out of the material that it has available to it, right? So your consciousness, your own consciousness, your unique set of laws of nature are what are creating your life, right? You're not creating your life through your mind, creating intentions. That isn't how it works. Your consciousness is always going to be using the highest possibility for your freedom. And the highest possibility for your freedom is often going to be something that brings challenge, because it is when challenge comes in and when ego patterns are challenged and triggered that we start to ask the deeper questions. We start to ask the deeper questions when we are not getting what we want, what we think that we want, and what we think that we need. So, when things are swimming along and ego is relaxed and peaceful, then ego is chuffed with itself. It feels like I'm getting what I want. I'm making the life that I've dreamt of. And the attention is directed more towards the ego and actually more wanting and more desire. Because when ego is relaxed and it thinks it's getting what it wants more. Because greed is a part of the ego nature. It wants more. It wants more of that good stuff. But it gets to a point where it thinks that it's creating this. But within the cycle of karma, there's only so long that you can be moving in pleasure until disappointment will come in, because that's just the way the cycle works. It's a cycle of misery. It's a cycle of suffering, because pleasure will always be followed by pain and disappointment, because it's a cycle of duality. It's a cycle of opposites. It's only when you come to the openness, the sameness, the truth, that you recognize that that cycle is not actually what you truly want. All that is truly longed for is to know the self. All that is truly longed for is freedom, is love. And freedom and love are here. So when there is a coming to openness, it is an openness to receive what is here, an openness to receive the truth of who you are, and that everything that is longed for is already here. The ego can say, oh, well, that isn't what I want. I want all these things. I need all these things in order to be happy. But that isn't truth. That's just a story. And depending on how wrapped up we are in a story, there is more untangling that needs to happen, right? So, openness. Openness is the true nature. Openness is receptive. Open receptivity is the true nature. The true nature is open, receptive, aware being. Everything that is longed for on the surface of life is here as the true nature, but it is only in openness that we can come to recognize this. And where the protective habit to want and need and to be moving within the conditions, the conditioning that has been learned, where that is very strongly in place, it takes a while for there to be an untangling and a relaxation, even just to come to presence, even just to come to stillness. Because the mind is constantly whirring, constantly chattering about what it wants. Even if it wants, which is some kind of expectation that it wants some kind of awakening. It wants to know the true nature. But the ego will never be given what it wants. It's one thing that's really important to allow to land. In order for it to land, we often have to move through a layer of deep disappointment that the ego will never ever get what it wants. It can play out the same cycle of karma again and again and again. But what you start to see is that what arises are the same feelings, the same disappointment. You start to notice that this is a repeating story. I'm living a repeating story. And the misery continues, right? But it's someone that's feeling miserable about not getting what that one wants. And that is not how it works. Of course, the ego cannot get what it wants. The ego has to surrender its happy ever after into eternity. Happy ever after is knowing the eternal nature. Happy ever after is happiness that is causeless. Happy ever after is a happiness that never ends. It is not a happiness that is caused by things. Can never ever find a happiness that lasts in things. Cannot find a love that will last in things. It does not exist. It just does not exist, right? And depending upon the evolution of the soul, depending upon what your assignment, we could say, your unique assignment is in this lifetime, you have no choice. You have absolutely no choice about what is happening. The grace is that when you come to realize that there is something vaster than the misery of the cycle of suffering, when you come to recognize that there is something vaster, something truer, when that comes alive, you are being given the outstretched hand of love, of the divine, of your true nature, of the self. You're being given the hand of freedom. And so when you are being given the hand of freedom, how long will you continue to choose the cycle of suffering? It will get more challenging, right? This is where there's free reign. There's a little bit of free reign. If you keep choosing a little bit of truth and a little bit of what the ego wants, it will become an ever more painful cycle. Because truth is what is truly longed for. It's not what the me truly longs for. It is just the choiceless happening of your evolution. When we say your evolution, it's the evolution of the consciousness that makes up the unique being that is part of the whole. You cannot fight against the natural evolution of consciousness. That is why everything on the surface of life will conspire for your surrender. Everything on the surface of life will create the exact situations and circumstances out of your own consciousness so that there will be a surrender of the ego sense, of the protective conditioning into a deeper truth in order to bring forward what you are truly longing for, in order to bring forward the happiness that is happy ever after, in order to bring forward the love that lasts for eternity, in order to bring forward freedom and peace that is undisturbable, in order to bring forward the truth, the divine, the beauty, the magnificence, everything that is longed for, you already are. And everything that is playing as the life is simply conspiring to bring that forward. But the way that it brings it forward is by having to challenge the wants and needs of the ego sense, having to challenge the survival mechanisms, the protective mechanisms. Has to be challenged, has to be challenged. And that is why it will usually be in the midst of some kind of tricky situation that we start to ask the deeper questions. It can be that we start to ask the deeper questions and then something gets brought in that suddenly the ego says, ooh, I might go in that direction. And you leave yourself and you follow. You are being tested. You are being tested to see, will you leave yourself and follow? Will you take the candy? Will you take the candy for the ego that's being offered and leave yourself? And of course, you can dance that dance. But life will always, out of your own consciousness, bring a situation where disappointment will follow. The eating of candy will always be followed by some kind of crash. Right? Always. It's just the way it works. It's nobody's fault. So when we come to recognize the choiceless nature of how this is all working, that we are being carried, we are being lived, we are being moved. We are not choosing what is happening. The only choice that we have is to turn into the self, into this moment, or to turn away into the ideas and concepts. Even, of course, on a certain level, that part is choiceless too. But we have to live where we find truth, right? So whatever feels true for you is where you live. If you feel like you are making a choice and you have the possibility of making a choice, choose yourself, choose love, choose kindness, choose truth over the changing, right? If you recognize that it's choiceless, you just fall into presence, into openness, and you just allow everything to just happen. Essentially, it's all the same. But if you feel like you have a choice, then you play the game of choice. Depends where you are living. But when we come to openness, we are openly receiving life just as it is. True nature recognizes that life is only just as it is. What is, just is. There isn't another scenario. There's only another scenario in the mind. Well, it could be this way or it could be that way. So much dwelling in the past. Should have done this, could have done that. No, absolutely not. It's all flowing only ever one way. And it is just to watch as the aware being how much time and energy gets projected into the past. Energy that is being distracting away from being here now, being the presence that is here now. So we come to the openness of this moment, just as it is, simple and free. The degree of the openness that you meet this moment with is the degree that you will receive the truth of who you are. When there is a meeting of this moment as the presence and being so fully here, as the aware being, you are just watching. You are not evaluating, judging, having opinions, thinking. You are just here, simply here. As the aware being, you can start to notice how much attention is wandering in this moment and how much attention is fully here. When attention is fully here, it is as if there is an alignment, and you will feel the stillness. You will feel the unmoving nature of the silent being that does not come and go, does not ebb and flow and change. The silent being is always the same. The aware being can watch and see how much attention is moving, is in allegiance with the mind and what is moving and changing, and how much attention is here now. The more the attention is here now, the more awareness is here. The more awareness that is here, you find yourself as the aware being that is simply watching, simply aware, aware of all that is moving and changing, aware of the content of experience, and aware of itself. Feel the awareness that is simply being, aware of itself. It is your very own presence, the felt sense of being here. You feel yourself here. You cannot look for this with the mind. You can only come to the felt sense of being here. Come to the resonance of being and recognize that you are here now. When you feel yourself here now, you are being, just simply being. You are the moment. You are the openness. You are the presence that just is. Stillness. silence, openness, simplicity. And you feel yourself here now. You are boundless, empty equanimity. There is no story. There is nothing that can disturb or shake you. And it is to feel this truth in your direct experience of this presence that you are. When you come to the presence that you are remembering a part of yourself, the part of yourself that is infinite, eternal, and free. The part of yourself that you have known so well as me and my story is such a tiny, tiny little part. And it is always moving and changing, but it is not the truth of who you are. All longing, all seeking, all desire is for the knowing of yourself, to know the love that you are, to know the truth of who you are, to know the unmoving nature of being that is ever present, simple, holy wholeness, right now, right now. You are not the person. You are not the mind and body. You are the field of infinite being in which the mind and body is happening. You are life itself, alive with its own knowing. And the life that you are is animating the body. And the consciousness of this life that you are is moving as a field that creates what we know as thoughts and call the mind. But me and my mind and my story does not exist in the way that the mind thinks it does. The mind has lots of concepts about itself, giving life to itself as an entity that we call me and mine. But all this actually is a habit to protect, a learned habit to protect. We are the infinite, eternal being. This is the way that it has always been. There is a misunderstanding that happens when a small human life, when the baby leaves the attachment to mother, there is an illusion of being an entity that is separate, that starts. But to start with, the baby does not recognize this. It only comes to learn this because the world around it starts to reflect its separateness, right? But the truth is that this layer that is imposed upon the true nature is just a layer, an imposition, right? It's not the truth. You have never ever left your true, infinite, eternal nature. You have never left yourself. As this imposition, this story of separation gets learned, it becomes natural and habitual to play this out. This is the service that we could say the soul has agreed to in this human life. It has agreed to play this game of separation. It has agreed to play out the misunderstanding, knowing that at some point it will remember again, knowing that the truth is that it never ever leaves itself. So perhaps you can recognize that as you have journeyed through the play of life, there has always been an inkling of the vast truth, right? There is a way that we never completely forget. We never completely forget. And that is always here as a possibility to remember. When you come more deeply, as you come more deeply to this recognition of true nature, you start to notice how the life has been littered with moments of remembering, so many moments of remembering. You start to see how the outstretched hand of truth has been offered so many times. It's not that a mistake is made, it's that there is not a readiness. But as you come to recognize the truth of who you are, the recognition that comes in first is, this has always been here. This truth has always been here. It's so familiar. It's so natural. It's so clear. It's who you are, and it is who you have always been. The story of the human life has just been a misunderstanding. It has been learned. It does not even need to be unlearned. It just needs to be seen from the true perspective for what it is. When you see it as the aware being, it just dissolves. The whole play of the story of life just dissolves in this moment, here now. You are not the story. When you feel your being here now, does the being have a story? Does the being have a name? Does the being have anything other than its knowing? Being aware of itself, knowing itself, it's all there is. The presence of being before any thought. There's no imposition. There are no layers. There's just the absolute purity, the innocence, the clarity of the immaculate being that you are. You are the innocence, the purity, the clarity, and the openness of the free being right here, right now. So as these words come, it is just to receive the resonance. The resonance is the open field. The resonance is the open field that is offering itself to you. And your openness to receive is how deeply you receive your true nature. If there are layers of protection, layers of expectation, layers of judgment, layers of concept, they will act as a barrier to you receiving the clear reflection of your open, transparent beauty. So to come to openness is to come into the true meeting. It's to meet here now in the sameness, meet in the wholeness, underneath all appearance, meet in the divine openness of true nature. Meeting in the open field that is infinite and whole. Meeting as the being, the one being. When you come to feel your own presence just being, you are opening to meet in the one being, the one heart, the one self that is the self of all. Where there is a busyness of mind, there will be distraction and movement and an unsettled feeling. There can be imaginings that I already know this. But if there is a knowing of this, there is a stillness. There is a falling in. There is no distraction. There is a simple openness. We could say that where there is recognition, there is a focus and an intensity to attune to the resonance. Because the self is so profoundly magnetized to itself, and this is choiceless. It is completely choiceless when the magnetized intensity of the self hears itself and recognizes itself in the open field. There is a quality of focus that becomes intense because it is magnetized to itself. Because it recognizes that the fulfillment of its longing is here now. It recognizes that deeper than the mind's ideas of what this is all about, there is something happening here that is more profound than the mind can imagine. And that magnetic pull is a choiceless draw into yourself, where the magnetism of recognizing the true nature is stronger than the habit to play the game of the me and my story and what I know and what I want and what I think and who I think I am. The story of self-importance crumbles in the face of the light of truth shining. The foundations that hold the sense of ego protection together just dissolve in the face of the true divine remembering. It is not about someone, it is about being yourself here now. It is about being yourself here now. Feeling the resonance, the recognition, where there is alignment, and falling into alignment. We could say that if a quality of distraction comes, it is to stay vigilant, have the humility to stay vigilant and not be pulled by the habit to distract. The mind will try, but this is how we overcome the learned, conditioned habits to distract and to keep going towards, we could say, the same groove, right? The mind comes in, we follow the groove, we follow the groove. But as we become more aware, awareness watches and sees, oh, there is the habit to follow the groove, just keep following the instinct, follow what the mind wants. As awareness deepens, because it's the true nature, there is this ability to watch that, see it before the habit to just move comes in, and to stay as the watcher, to stay as the witness, remain still and unmoving in your true nature, in the face of the mind's wanting coming in. We could say it's even in the most simple things, like, I want a drink. Who wants a drink? There has to be someone here to want the drink. But the habit to just move around this way and that way, it's so quick. So this invitation, it's not to say you don't do anything, don't move, don't take a drink, but it's to watch how habitual it is to be distracted and not rest in the true nature. It's not about complying with rules. It's about an invitation to actually realize what is true here now, and to see as the aware being what is not. What the mind wants here now is not true and real. What is true and real is the presence that doesn't move. When the mind says, in this example, I want a drink, I'm going to just take a drink and look around, right? Just to notice, you stay in the presence and you watch it. You fall deeper into the stillness. You fall deeper into the stillness. Of course, if there's a reason, if you're coughing or there's a medical reason that you need a drink, it's not saying that you mustn't do this. It's not about creating rules. It's just an opportunity to watch how easy it is to move around. When you fall into the presence, you are the awareness that's not moving. You are the awareness that's not moving. So you watch the habit to move, and you start to see that the habit to move is an instinctual, conditioned habit that you so quickly are being carried by the mind. So this example then you can use in everything. Watch how quickly checking the phone, on the computer, saying yes to something that will satisfy the ego, the habits, the conditioning. It's so quick. It's so quick. It's not about creating a plan to break the habits. It's about being the aware being that watches the habits. That's how they shift. That's how they truly shift. How many times have we made a to-do list that tomorrow we're going to break all of these habits? We're going to change the life, right? Here's the points. This is tomorrow, fresh start, new life. Not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to eat this, right? We make a plan, but when the me is making the plan, do we also notice how long does the plan last? Does it fall apart at some point? Of course it does, because it's just like everything else in the cycle. When awareness is watching the habits, it's the gentle way, it's the kind way, and it is the way that everything truly shifts. Because as awareness, we're watching, oh, there's a habit of the character to move in this way. Be aware of it. Shine the light on it. Okay, what's important? When you go towards it, what happens if you don't give the ego what it wants? It can bring sensation, it can bring trigger, it can bring charge. If the ego doesn't get what it wants, then you remain, you stay still, and you feel. When you don't move towards what the ego wants, you just watch. Then you get to feel the feelings in the nervous system and unwind that pattern through the nervous system, releasing old stress. You are the aware being. What does that ego really want, right? It says, I want this, I want that, I want to find some kind of goodness and pleasure in things. I want to numb myself. I want to give myself enjoyment, whatever it thinks it's getting. What it really wants, find out. It wants love. It wants connection. It wants truth. It wants freedom. It wants wholeness, right? That's what's truly wanted. The ego play is a misinterpretation of true longing into desire. And as long as that's what's playing, and we just keep habitually following it, then we keep repeating. This is the subtle place where we have choice. Remain, watch what happens. Can start to feel all the fizzing up of stress in the ego. Sometimes it will be very light. Sometimes it will feel really challenging. Sometimes you'll overcome it, you'll watch it, and everything will dissolve. And then it will come again, and instinct will move towards it. Before you know it, you've already done it. You failed, right? That's what the mind says, but that's not true. It's just all playing itself out. The more awareness there is in this moment, the more of your true nature is here in this moment. The more you are resting as the aware being and watching, the more awareness there is, the more slow and open this moment is, the more you see the habits, the way the personality, the character plays, right? This starts to undo all of the tangles and patterns of consciousness that are creating the life. And this is how we gently, kindly untangle all of the conditioned habits, everything that has been learned, while falling deeper and deeper into yourself. When you do not make the move of what the ego wants, you move through the releasing of the old stress and you fall more deeply into stillness. Victory. This is the victory that's the jai, right? This is the jai. It's victory to the divine, victory to the self, victory to the being, because you have stayed present with yourself. This is the way that consciousness works. It's a field of intelligence. It's a field of intelligence that is wise. And when you are slow, still, and aware, you can access the wisdom of your true nature. You can access the wisdom that you are. And it will bring forward everything that needs to be known. And this is where there can be a letting go of all of that knowledge, all of that stuff that the mind thinks is important. You can trust yourself. You can trust the wisdom of the being here now. So as these words come, even just the way that you start to recognize patterns is awareness recognizing something, right? So you recognize a habit, you see it, you smile. The being sees your smile. It sees your smile and it feels it in the field. And what happens in that is the stillness gets more alive, more enlivened, right? So as these words come, you recognize something. Awareness shines upon it, it lets go. The field of our satsang, the stillness, the silence gets deeper. There's more joy, there's more openness, right? This is how it works. It's magic. There's no doing involved. It's happening all by itself. So as we could say, each one notices something, shines the light of awareness on it, it transforms. And then that resonant, tangled, discordant pattern shifts, it dissolves, and then more stillness, more silence comes to the surface. And we all get to revel in it, right? Nothing is happening independently of itself. Everything is one movement. So we meet in the sameness, where one being shines the light of awareness upon a habit and it releases and collapses. That being might feel more openness, but that openness, it blossoms in all beings, not even only in our meeting. It blossoms in all beings. This is how it works. We are never moving independently of the whole. So, the highest service is to know yourself. The highest, most profound service is to be yourself, to live this truth right on the surface of life. So the deeper that it is recognized in the vast infinite field, our work, we could say, yes, to open to the awake field of awareness, being the awake being is so important. But what is recognized in the vastness, our work is to bring this through the refinement and integration to the surface of life. So it's like we open to wholeness, and once we open to this wholeness, we're in the process of bringing this wholeness in service to the surface of life. And the way that this happens is that we refine what seems like your own life. You work through your own assignment, but everything that is being worked through and cleared is as an offering to the whole. It's bringing more freedom at the unique point, and it is opening the whole field, of course. It's bringing more light and clarity to the surface, right? Of course, the divine light is ever beaming. It's never diminished. It's never, ever touched by anything. But so the more that we approach it, the more we can bring to the surface. The more that we open to it, the more we can bring to the surface. The more openness there is within our unique being, the more of that is being recognized in consciousness can come through to the surface. So there's a lot happening in the field of consciousness. There's a lot of profundity happening, and all of it is service. Our forms, our bodies are vehicles of service, and they are in the process of being refined, recalibrated, and cultured in order to bring more wholeness to the surface, more love to the surface, right? This is all that is ever happening, all that is ever happening. This whole process is not a personal process. It is not happening for the me or to the me. It is the surrender of the me, of the protection, of all the patterns and conditioning into the wholeness of being, in order that this divine truth can be lived, this love can be lived right on the surface of life. Everything that is happening as the life is happening not to you. It's not even really for you. It is for the whole. And that is why it is about being the openness that receives everything, just as it is. The work is service. The opening to true nature is service. And the integration and refinement of the knowing, the unquestionable knowing of the unified field of God is also service. And as this is unfolding, it is bringing more light, more love, more of this truth right to the surface of life. And this is the work of wholeness. Mm. 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 So, feeling yourself here now, being here now, coming to the openness of being here, feeling the awareness, the aware being. The aware being is aware of all that is moving and changing, aware of all that is moving and changing, and aware of itself being here, being aware, simply aware of being aware. Mm. 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 It is just to feel the presence that is here, that is not moving and changing. Recognize, how do you know this presence is here? The knowing is the knowing of being. It is the presence itself that knows its own presence, simply being here. Mm. Just to come to the presence is to come to the open field of infinite being. It is to come here as an offering to the field, without knowing what that means. To offer everything into the openness. Without knowing how, without knowing what that means, but just to feel the resonance as these words come. Feel where they are alive, where they are recognized. And let that be where you are resting. Let that be where you are resting. Mm. 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 The way that things happen is completely choiceless. It is your own consciousness creating exactly what is needed in order to see the parts of yourself that could not otherwise be seen, released, and freed. Is freeing the protection, the conditioning. It's freeing the desire mechanism. It's freeing the fear mechanism. What you can trust is yourself. You can trust this moment. You can trust the being. You can trust the presence that does not move and change. You can trust the knowing that is here in the presence of being. Can trust the silence, the stillness, the simplicity of this moment here now, just as it is. Empty, open equanimity, a simple, blissful emptiness, where there is no story, no past, no dreams of a future, just the vast, open, timeless being. So simple, so free. Here, everything is okay. You do not need to know anything but yourself. Meeting in the sameness, in the openness, in the love that just is. Cannot do it wrong, cannot do it right, can just be the being that just is, between right and wrong, opening to the vastness of simply being. Mm. Never landing anywhere, resting as the openness, not landing in conclusion, resting as the openness that is ever open. Mm. 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 It is just to start recognizing the truth that is here in the presence. Let it be enough. Let this moment be enough. Where you feel the resonance, the recognition, it is to be with this, however it is received, and really deeply receive the resonance. See how quick the mind can be to want something different or more by its conceptual beliefs. But it is to feel the presence that is here and receive the grace of your true nature to the depth that it is possible in this moment. The receiving of this moment just as it is how there comes a deepening. It is all about surrender and handing over control, saying yes to what is, letting go of need and doing, and simply being.